and welcome to the Bar Down Hockey Show. I'm Josh Zackles here with Ethan Schmidt and Liesl Babka. So, guys, we're back after our show last week, and a lot has happened in hockey.
What has, good morning, Josh, and good morning, Ethan. How are you guys today?
Dude, I'm fantastic, and it's almost playoff hockey time. I can't tell you how ecstatic I am.
Yeah, it's an exciting time for hockey, but, as the season winds down, we get a clearer and clearer picture of who's going to be our points leader, who's going to be our goals leader at the end of the season, and let's take a look at that. So right now, Connor McDavid is still leading the league in points and assists. That's just absolutely incredible for a second-year player.
I'm telling you, he has a strong path into the future of the NHL, so we should see a lot of that in the next 10 years or so from him.
The kid's destined for greatness, and there's no doubt that he's going to be a franchise leader, and excited to see what he does in his future because we know it's bright.
Absolutely, and looking at the other major offensive categories, goals and plus-minus, you got Brooks Orpik from the Capitals leading in plus-minus with a plus 33. Pretty incredible. And then in goals, you got Sidney Crosby. He's been pulling away from the pack a little bit. He was tied with Brad Marchand last week. And this week, Marchand still has 37, but Crosby has 42 goals.
He's pulling away. And so I think that's a big plus for the Penguins. And, just as a fantastic player, you want a lot of goals out of players like that.
Yeah, Sidney Crosby definitely drives that team. He's the motor. 42 goals this season and then 40 assists. He's obviously helping the team, helping other players cash in too. So.
But Ethan, didn't you say that Nikita Kovalchuk?
No, Nikita Kucherov just came out of nowhere, and he's in second place now, passing Brad Marchand and Patrick Kane and all those guys. He's in second place, and the Lightning are making a push for a playoff run, so look out for them.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess looking at the goaltending categories, and pretty much Sergei Bobrovsky is running away with almost every single category. He's first in goals allowed average, first in wins, first in save percentage, and second in shutouts.
He's been so good this year. It's scary how great of a goaltender he's been this season, and it'd be honestly a big reason why the Blue Jackets have an honest shot.
And where do you guys think the Blue Jackets would be if Bobrovsky was not playing at this elite level this year? Do you think they would be in contention for a Stanley Cup victory, or?
I don't think so.
Well, they would.
It's really hard.
I mean, I think that they wouldn't be fighting for such a great seed. They would definitely be lower down in the East. They would make the playoffs for definitely. They have such a good team offensively too, but definitely without his play, it would just be really tough to see them battling. I mean, they're still fighting for the number one seed almost. So, you look at Bobrovsky, 40 wins, 7 shutouts, and a .934 save percentage. That's outstanding. I haven't seen those numbers in a while. It seems like it's just so impressive.
And one thing that might be interesting to look up. So John Tortorella is the coach for the Blue Jackets. He also coached the Rangers. Coached Henrik Lundqvist. Lundqvist had some pretty good years under Tortorella, so it would be interesting to see what does Bobrovsky do under Tortorella. Maybe is Tortorella like the goaltender whisperer or something, like being. And I mean, Lundqvist is an elite goalie. He was elite before Tortorella. He's elite after Tortorella, but maybe Tortorella is able to elevate goaltenders to play at elite levels. So it would be interesting to see in a few years if Bobrovsky is able to keep up this amazing pace, if Tortorella is still the coach, and maybe we can even draw some correlations.
I didn't really think about it like that. That's a good point to make. But I think the huge question is will he keep it up for playoffs? Because, bringing the Penguins into it, everyone was always harping on Fleury. He's not a playoff goalie. Is Bobrovsky a playoff goalie? Will he be able to keep that up within this, playoff run?
It'll be interesting to see how hard the Blue Jackets push for that number one seed. It'll be interesting to see if Tortorella rests Bobrovsky near the end of the regular season to maybe save some energy for the playoffs.
I don't know. Tortorella's pushing the team. You talk about the correlation between Tortorella and Lundqvist, and then now Bobrovsky. Goaltenders usually have their own goaltending coach, and I couldn't tell you who's been working with Bobrovsky, but it could be the same guy that works with Lundqvist, and Tortorella just put in a good name, kind of got him to come over too. But Tortorella is just a great overall coach. I mean, he really pushes the players, and we've seen him in the past be fiery and just one of those coaches that cares a whole lot. I mean, even if he seems pretty upset about things, it's because he cares, and he's been a really good coach and definitely a really great fit for the Blue Jackets.
And I think we'll talk a little bit more about maybe how the Blue Jackets will fare in the playoffs in a little bit later in the show. But first, let's talk about a team that's definitely not heading for the playoffs, the Arizona Coyotes.
Well, this is recent news. They just signed a Clayton Keller to an entry-level contract. He played. He just finished off his season with Boston University, and he tallied 14 multi-point games, and he finished tied for 7th in all of college hockey with 1.45 points per game average. So, I think that's a pretty. I don't know how that'll go for the Coyotes, but. So, what do you guys think? How do you think they're heading?
I mean, the Coyotes definitely have a lot of young players, and it's just a matter of finding some identity. But they're probably gonna lose Doan to retirement, and I mean, he hasn't really been what they needed as of late either. I mean, he's probably a great locker room leader, but the Coyotes need somebody that can go on the ice and just facilitate and be their man, like a Crosby or a Connor McDavid. It's obviously hard to find such a great player like that so easily, but hopefully one of these young budding players can step up and give some identity to this Coyotes team.
And speaking of young budding players, again, just touching in on the hometown hero of Scottsdale, Arizona, Austin Matthews. He is up there in the NHL goals lead. He's 5th with 34 goals, tied with Vladimir Tarasenko, which is really nothing to sneeze at. But a really recent rookie performance that actually happened last night. Brock Bosner. So he was playing in the NCAA on Thursday. Then he signed an NHL contract with the Canucks on Friday. He was drafted by them in 2015, but they let him play out his remaining years for his college. And Saturday he scored his first NHL goal. So that's kind of a crazy
turnaround.
Yeah, crazy couple of days there. I know, Ethan, you've had some crazy weekends, but I'd have to say that's probably the craziest weekend I've ever heard of.
Yeah,
he played for the University of North Dakota. He was just only playing with them this week, and then he turned around and played in the NHL, so that's fantastic. And I can't imagine, being his teammate on ND and, saying that you played with him and then tomorrow he's an NHL player.
I guess just to touch on the Canucks a little bit, because over the past few years they've been a little bit quiet. Again, they're down in the standings again this year. 6th seed in the West. Looks like they're pretty much out of the playoffs race. Almost 30 points out. But again, just looking at the Canucks, when they need this young talent. They need kids like Bosner to step up and start scoring goals. So the fact that, and maybe he's not going to be a huge goal scorer, but they need kids like those, like that, to contribute to the hockey team, and that's going to be key to their coming back up as a good hockey team.
That Canucks team is definitely in a rebuilding stage. It's not as bad as the Coyotes, but they're definitely trying to rebuild and get good solid draft picks right now as well.
Well, if anyone is interested, the NCAA men's hockey tournament is going on.
I was going to point that out too.
Brought that up on our Twitter page. Harvard won against Providence this weekend. Air Force won against Western Michigan, and Harvard and Air Force will be forcing off, playing each other in the quarterfinals on one side.
Harvard and Minnesota Duluth are playing on April 6th in the semifinals.
Oh.
You can pull
yeah.
up the bracket at NCAA.com. You just search NCAA Hockey 2017. Today, or March 26th, Notre Dame and UMass Lowell taking on each other, and then Denver and Penn State have been really solid teams this year. And NCAA hockey is fun. You get to see a lot of the top draft picks in the nation go at it, and they're definitely the best colleges in the nation, and they play against each other in like some real tough games, and it's almost as exciting as playoff hockey sometimes. So.
And it is pretty exciting because ASU's own NCAA team did play against some of these teams.
Oh yeah, they play against
Ohio State, Notre Dame,
Air Force,
Denver.
Western Michigan, right? And so
Yeah.
it's like this is who ASU is competing against the whole year. So I think that's pretty cool to say as well.
Absolutely. And again, once the NCAA tournament is over, the real one, the hockey one, not the basketball one. Who really cares about that? Once that's over, we'll hit you with a recap. We'll talk about the champion, maybe what's next for some of their key players. Are they entering the NHL draft? Have they already been drafted? Now they're going to be signed. Will they be returning next year? So we'll take a quick look at that team once that's all over. But first, let's talk about the pro playoffs. Let's talk about the fact that the NHL season is pretty much 10 games from being over for a lot of teams. And
just about less now.
Yeah,
it's getting into single digits for most teams.
Absolutely. And let's take a quick look at the playoff picture in the Eastern Conference. 3 teams have already locked up playoff spots, including Liesel's Pittsburgh Penguins.
I'm excited, but not just the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Washington Capitals, obviously the first team to make it into playoff contention, and then the Columbus Blue Jackets as well. However, that wild card spot is still really up in the air.
Yeah, you can make the argument that 6 or 7 teams in the Eastern Conference are still in it for the second wild card spot. The Rangers are pretty much running away with the first one. They have 96 points. They're 12 points ahead of the Bruins, who currently hold the second wild card spot. But 2 points behind the Bruins, you have the Islanders.
Josh, how are you thinking about that?
I don't like that they lost to the Bruins yesterday. So there's that. But, you know, they did beat the Penguins. They did beat the Rangers this past week. And they did play back-to-back against the Penguins and Rangers and were able to take 4 points away from that. So
do you think they're going to pull out that second seed spot?
I don't know. They just brought up Yaroslav Halak from the AHL again. So we'll see how he plays. He played against the Penguins, and he played relatively well considering he was playing such a great offensive team.
Mm-hmm.
He only let in, I think it was 3 goals.
3 goals, yep, and it was a shootout.
And it was a shootout, and yeah, he let in a shootout goal to Sidney Crosby, but I mean, I don't know too many goaltenders who could have stopped that. So the Islanders are in third, and then following the Islanders, just 1 point behind the Islanders, actually, are the Tampa Bay Lightning, who have been surging of late. They're 6-3-1 in their last.
They're going to steal
10.
the wild card spot.
I know.
They might. They're only 3 points behind the Bruins. Then you got the Carolina Hurricanes, who are 5 points behind the Bruins, but they still have 9 games left to play.
I don't know about them, but they are on a 3-game win streak.
And they're
7-0-3 last
7-0-3 in their last 10. Then you got the Panthers and the Flyers, who are occupying the 6th and 7th spots.
I think the Flyers are definitely done.
They are 4-6-0 in their last 10. Each team is. So I don't know, considering they're so far back and the race is so tight.
Well,
you can't count them out yet.
Florida did win last night against Blackhawks, 7-0.
Yeah.
So
Patrick Kane was rattled, and it was just a bad time for the Hawks out there.
I do agree with you. I think the Flyers could be done. However, I think Florida could still inch its way up there. I mean, they're only 7 points away from Boston, and if Boston,
it's going to be a grind.
If nobody can choke, that's basically what it comes down to.
They have to win their remaining games, or at least 80 85% of them.
I mean, Ethan, as a former player, I know obviously you've never been in an NHL playoff race, but if you were, I mean, what would you be saying to your teammates?
Oh, you just got to keep playing your style of hockey. You can't let down. I mean, I noticed that when you try to force things too much, that's when you don't have a good play out of the whole team. So they just got to keep playing loose, and they got to stay. Everybody's got to stay healthy. Everybody's got to stay. It's all hands on deck, you know.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you play for, and you buckle down, try to make it happen. But I tell you what, guys, these playoffs are going to be absolutely exciting, so super dynamic. I remember a season or two ago that no Canadian teams made the playoffs at all, but we're looking at 5 out of 6 of Canadian teams getting into the playoffs this season, and it's just gonna be really fun to see some new faces in there, especially Toronto, Edmonton, teams that have been trying to come up for so long. Ottawa's usually been a high C playoff team for a while.
Well, talking about that Western Division, the Chicago Blackhawks and the Minnesota Wild have already clinched playoff berth. However, in the Pacific Division, the Anaheim Ducks, San Jose Sharks, and Edmonton Oilers are all tied with 91 points. And I think, Ethan's talking about, I think this playoff run for everybody should be a great season to watch. Just talking about how 3 teams are tied for a clinch in the playoff right now. And I think, again, no one can choke in that. It's whoever can pull out and finish their games off.
Absolutely. And Anaheim does have a game on San Jose and Edmonton. They've played 74. San Jose and Edmonton have played 75. But, again, it's just incredible to see how close these teams are. It's probably one of the most competitive seasons of hockey we've seen across the league. And I mean, yeah, the Western Wild Card isn't as competitive as the Eastern Wild Card, but it's tough to be that competitive.
It's so exciting, everybody's battling for it. Everybody's in there this year, it seems like. I mean, obviously, there's only 16 teams that can get in, and most of these franchises have just, it's come a long way. There's nobody that's too worse off. I mean, we look at the Avalanche and Coyotes, but as a whole, you're right, Josh. The NHL has been super competitive, and it's great to see.
Why do you think that is, though? Why do you think now it's peaking? You see, and there was always tons of teams who were unsuccessful, not very good, and there was always, those top dogs, and now it's kind of like the college basketball bracket. Everyone across the board is really good. Why do you think that is?
And everybody has a shot.
Yeah.
I think you're seeing, and I think you're seeing what we had in basketball maybe a little bit ago, where you had a lot of superstars scattered amongst teams. Like right now, you have in basketball, you have all the superstars on like a few teams. You have a bunch of superstars on the Warriors, a bunch of superstars on the Cavaliers, and I mean, yeah, the rest of the league has their superstars, but they're not really like together. Yeah. So in hockey, you have superstars on almost every single team. I mean, you can go across the board for every single playoff team or every single team that's at least close to a playoff spot, and you can name a superstar. And I think that's one of the keys. That's why we've seen this surge in competitiveness in the NHL, because almost every single team has a superstar that they can turn to and be like, we want the puck in your hands. Or sometimes it's even a goalie. Like for the Rangers, Henrik Lundqvist is their superstar. They can say, we can let up 40 shots a game, and we'll know that he's only letting in 1 or 2.
And two, you have to remember, times have changed where the Detroit Red Wings are completely far gone from playoffs, and they've been in the playoffs for the last, I believe, 20 years. Is that what it was?
It's been well over 20.
Well, I think 25. I think 25.
I mean, still, that's a good chunk of time. And then, as well as the Los Angeles Kings, I mean, they are 9 points out of the second wild card spot, and so they've always been a heavy set team, and now they're falling behind. So I think it is a times are changing. Times
are certainly changing. The league seems to be kind of flipping over to some new teams that are reigning. You had the Kings, the Blackhawks. You had teams like Vancouver, who were pretty recently good teams. And even the Lightning were a really good team just a year or two ago. And now you have new teams taking over. You have Toronto, you have Edmonton, you have Anaheim that's looking good. And they've been decent, but they haven't been this good recently.
And I think you're right. The NHL is completely different than the NBA, and even per se the NFL as well, because you don't have the same teams going into the Super Bowl every single year. It's going to be a blowout. In hockey, it can be anybody, and it can take any charge. And I think that is truly why the NHL is the best franchise sport in the United States.
And quickly before we move on from the playoffs, because we will move on, there is other stuff in hockey. Even though it's not as exciting as the playoffs, there's still other stuff that we need to talk about. But the San Jose Sharks, I know we mentioned them as being tied for the lead in the Pacific Division, but in their last 10, they are 3-7, losers of 6 straight. And they're the only team that has a losing streak.
They're on a slump.
In the top 3. I mean, Anaheim has won 3 straight, Edmonton's won 2 straight, and you look at San Jose, they've lost 6 straight games. That hurts.
That does hurt because they could have already had a spot clinched in the playoffs.
They better figure it out. They're gonna have a tough time in playoffs. If they're not consistent and they're not hot, that's their game. Like just watching the Sharks last season, when they were so dominant in the playoffs, they were just a hot team and everybody was working together. But you lose 6 straight, there's obviously something going on.
Well, I was actually really surprised how far they got last year and actually going into the finals, because growing up watching the Sharks, they would always get into the playoffs, but they would lose first round or lose second round, and now they're finally getting their momentum back. But now, do they drop out all the way, or do they push through, or are they going to be a first round loser again?
I think it's going to be tough for them to drop out of the playoffs all the way, considering that they have 91 points, and that number is obviously going to stay there. And the Kings, the closest team that could overtake them for a playoff spot, because I'm saying they drop past Calgary, who has 88, past St. Louis, who has 86. Kings have 77 points. I don't see the Kings climbing to over 91 points.
No, but they could drop seeds.
They could drop seeds, and that could absolutely hurt them. If they don't figure this out, and maybe they're just resting some of their stars, but I mean for 6 straight games, that's.
I think if the Sharks have to travel, they're not going to play very well in the playoffs.
No.
So losing higher seeding is very rough for them, and 6 straight losses, that shows something's going on. So they better figure it out if they want to be contenders this season again.
Absolutely, and again,
it was the rowing streak is 25 seasons, and it's probably going to end this year.
I think they're already eliminated. Yeah, they have 70 points.
They're almost as bad as the Coyotes.
I mean, technically,
is that safe to say?
They have 70 points.
Maybe this season,
Coyotes
but their
have
franchise is
63.
definitely not gonna.
Yeah, they're pretty even.
They're gonna pick it back up. It's Detroit.
And I mean, technically, the Red Wings aren't eliminated from the playoffs. They're only 14 points back of the wild card spot, and they still have 9 games to play. So technically, they could still make it. But
it's gonna be a long shot.
Realistically, they're out of it. And I mean, the only team that's been eliminated from the playoffs mathematically in the Eastern Conference is the New Jersey Devils. So,
I see.
Yeah, New Jersey. I'm from New Jersey, so
New Jersey native in the building.
Representing hockey New Jersey, and maybe just New Jersey as a whole there. Anyway,
what a sad state.
Looking up north from New Jersey, we got the New York Rangers, and we just mentioned their superstar Henrik Lundqvist, and he's finally returning to the team. I believe today. He's scheduled to start for them today, after almost a month of just not being with the team.
And they're playing the Anaheim Ducks, so, they're tied in a 3-way tie. So, I mean, and the Rangers are trying to pull off that, trying to keep that wild card spot that they have, which I'm sure they will, but, you want to keep winning games. So that should be a pretty interesting game to watch, so I would definitely check that one out if you have time.
I'm sure, and I'm sure the Rangers have their eyes on the Penguins, who... Yeah, the Rangers are 7 points back of the Penguins. Penguins have 103, Rangers have 96. But I don't think that's a reason to just say, oh, we'll just take the first wild card spot. You got to always be hungry.
You do. And, it really does matter where you fall in the category of being lined up for playoffs. So
That division just blows my mind.
The Metropolitan.
I can't even. It's never seen so much talent and so much, such potent teams in one spot like that. Just looking at it, it's mind-boggling how great these teams are. In the playoffs are just going to be crazy because some of these teams are going to match up against each other.
It's going to be very interesting to watch, and we are going to see some. It looks like we're going to see some late round divisional matchups. If again, the NHL already has. If the playoffs started today, we could see maybe a Ranger. Right now, the Rangers are on a different side of the bracket than the Capitals and Blue Jackets and Penguins. So we could see in Eastern Conference Finals, we could see in Eastern Conference Semifinals where division rivals are facing off against each other, and that would make it very interesting because usually when you have division rivals, it's a little bit more of a physical brand of hockey, and especially in playoff hockey.
I do not like the way that looks right now. I mean,
For the Penguins?
For the Penguins. They're playing the Blue
It's gonna
Jackets.
be
Like
rough.
I said, it will be rough. But then,
The Jackets and the Caps.
the Capitals
Wow.
have to play the Bruins if they started we The Sharks, we were mentioning earlier, would have to play the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, dude, the playoffs, take a look at it if you haven't looked at it. That's what we're trying to get
This
at.
is gonna be. This is gonna be insane.
Even for your Predators,
It's like a
they're
kid
the
at a
third.
candy shop, man.
They're the third seed in their division. They're facing off against the Minnesota Wild.
That would be a crazy series because Ryan Suter, ex-Predator, is now one of the defensive leaders for the Wild, and just back and forth. And I mean that would be okay for Nashville because what hurt them last year was having to travel back and forth on the West Coast. They had to go play Anaheim first, pulled out a win against them in that series, and then they had to play the Sharks, so they had to keep going. They traveled like over double the amount of any other team. So if the Predators line up against Minnesota, it'd be a little bit easier. And
Yeah.
I don't think it would be too hard on them this year because they'll stay centralized.
Well, when playoffs, this bracket does finalize, Josh, myself, and Ethan will all give you our personal opinions and see what's going on. I think we should dedicate a whole show of, just playoffs and what could happen,
Absolutely, we'll take it matchup by matchup.
We can each
We'll
post
predict the
a
winners.
bracket on our Twitter.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
we're gonna fill out the hockey our brackets posted on our Twitter account, and we encourage you, the fans, to fill out your own brackets. Maybe tweet it out. Maybe add us. We might retweet it if we see you guys adding us.
And we could even mention you on our show, so feel free to do that. However, we don't want to leave with just a small bummer. The Dallas Stars, his own Patrick Sharp, is out for the rest of the season, even though there's only a short few games left. He is scheduled for hip surgery.
Oh.
Hopefully he will be back by the start of the season for this upcoming season in the fall. That's a really unfortunate situation. I know my roommate, Nicole, she's a Chicago Blackhawks fan. She mentioned even though Patrick Sharp isn't on the Blackhawks still, she does feel really bad for him in that
poor
sense.
Sharpie.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And it looks like he was under contract this year, but next year he's an unrestricted free agent.
We'll see. Yeah,
You could be moving teams.
we'll see how that all goes.
That might cost him some money because
playoffs, everything. I think it could. There's a
Poor
possibility.
guy. I hope he gets better soon.
However, let's end on a positive note. Ethan, who do you think is gonna come in for the wild card spot on the eastern side?
I'm just so excited for these playoffs. I'm licking my lips here. Like, this is just gonna be a crazy playoffs to watch. We're lined up for some beautiful matchups for a wild card spot. The Rangers probably are gonna lock it in. It sucks for them because they're doing better than Montreal, who's leading the Atlantic, but Montreal's gonna get a way higher seed. So.
Who do you think is gonna pull out that second seed?
Boston's been playing pretty well all year. They've had Brad Marchand really lead them to where they are now. If they can just get above 500 and win 3/4 of their remaining games, I think Boston will seal it, and they'll put on a good test against the Capitals as the 8th seed, I think. But I think the Capitals will definitely prevail over them. But
Josh?
they'll give them a hard-fought series.
I think the Rangers have all but locked up the first wild card seed. 96 points. They're 12 points ahead of the Bruins, so I just don't see any team catching them for the first wild card spot, unless they just really fall apart over the stretch, which is only 7 more games for them. So I don't see them falling apart like that. I think it's gonna be very interesting for the second wild card spot. I don't think Boston's gonna hold on to that. And I'm not just saying that because I'm an Islanders fan. I hope the Islanders make it, but I think we could see Tampa Bay come in. They've been surging lately. They've been winning a lot of games down the stretch in March and late February, which is what you want to see from your team as a fan. You want to see them surge around this time of year. They might be able to sneak in. I don't know exactly what they can do against the Capitals. I think
I think they could pull out the Capitals to 7 games.
I think it's going to be interesting. I think if you see a team like the Lightning come in, they might just be running out of gas.
Both Boston and Tampa Bay are tough.
So, yeah, I will have to go with the Rangers. They, pick for the first wild card spot, and I'd have to agree with Josh. I feel like Tampa Bay pulls out that second wild card spot.
We'll see. We'll know a little bit more by next weekend. That's for sure. But
absolutely. So I think that wraps it up for our show today. Again, follow us on Twitter at BDH_show. And you can follow me on Twitter at Josh Zacklis.
And you can follow me at Liesel_Lee.
You follow me at the Ethan Schmidt.
And this is Bar Down Hockey.